Will Romelu Lukaku ever shut his mouth? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Football Therapy. It's always on international duty, isn't it? Where players start talking. It's a Belgium-related show today. We are going to talk about Romeo Lavia in the times of this new balanced Chelsea midfield where everything seems like it's coming together and everything's going to be all right, as Bob Marley once sang. But Romelu Lukaku has been on international break talking as well about this summer drama, always creating drama himself. And it is always Belgians, whether it's Courtois, Lukaku, and even Eden Hazard did it in times where we're rightly paying respects to his career as he's just recently retired. We're all hoping he comes back to Chelsea in some capacity, though I'm not sure that will happen. Yeah, Belgium's on international duty. Just alarm bells going off. Anyway, thanks for joining me. We're going to talk about Lukaku's quotes today. We'll talk a little bit about Romeo Lavia returning to the side because the Athletic have done an article on Chelsea's midfield and how good it is and how really balanced it is and actually how Gallagher's super important and how Pochettino really likes Gallagher, who's super important, which actually has two players to consider with this, one being Nkunku and one being Romeo Lavia, which is like over £100 million worth of player. And you're certainly not going to drop the £220 million worth of player in Caicedo and Enzo. So we'll speak about that in a minute, so keep that locked. But let's quickly talk about Big Rom. Few bloody goals and he's, giving it the big one again. I'm going to read his quotes from LondonWorld.com. Lukaku has been addressing the issues of his Chelsea exit, partly by insisting everyone will be shocked when he speaks. Well, I tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, most people are shocked when he speaks because he comes out with absolute nonsense. I still laugh when I think about the interview of Sky Italia. The fact how it just came out in incremental pieces. It was so painful, but there was just this comical edge to it. The fact how other sweeping statements and headline quotes were coming out one after the other, and you were just thinking, when does it end? How long was this freaking interview? Anyway, Rahman Osman writes, on loan Chelsea star Romelu Lukaku has vowed to seal the details of his Chelsea exit soon after leaving Chelsea to Roma. The Belgian striker has wasted little time in settling into life at Roma and has scored 7 goals in his first 7 games. Yeah, good. By the way, that is good for us. Granted, if you look at the opposition and the goals, it's flat track bully vibes, but I don't give a sausage. So if he's scoring goals, we will make the transfer, hopefully. He has further stated that everyone will be shocked when they find out the details on his exit, with Chelsea now willing to sell him for the cut price of £37 million. Yeah, we've spoken about this in a previous video, just over 40 million euros. And yeah, Fabrizio reported on that. Feel free to go and watch my instantaneous reaction a couple of uploads ago, but I'm pretty happy with it, all things considered. Lukaku has remained relatively quiet, maybe by his standards, during all this, but he has started while on international duty, that he's biding his time to speak, because that's how it works. Why? What do you gain from being yeah, things are going well. Chelsea have put a clause in, I've scored goals, but you know what? I'm going to throw a spanner in the works here. There's some shocking stuff that I'm going to tell you. Just shut the At least get your transfer done. Why are you boiling up drama that could, throw into jeopardy your desired move? Frickin' knobber. He said this. He told a packed group of reporters this, quote, most of the people in the room know me. You know that I don't like to beat around the bush. I will speak in time. But if I really said how it all went last summer, everyone would be shocked. Jesus Christ. What was the biggest nonsense I read? That I was supposedly told I was going to a certain club, but that didn't make any sense. That I was supposedly told, so he was told he was going to a certain club, but that didn't make any sense. So he's either talking about Juve or Inter here, I guess Inter. Look, the truth is, man, Inter called him. You can say what you want, Rom, mate, because you've got reports from really reputable, high-end, top-tier journalists, not just saying the clubs, respectively, Inter and Chelsea, who are both maintain a good relationship, probably because they feel sorry for each other, both being shafted by you, fam. But his teammates, his old Inter teammates, were calling him up, and he wasn't picking up the phone. That's what the reports. I wasn't there, but that's what reputable journalists have said. And because of Lukaku's behaviour in the public eye and in the public sphere or whatever, we've got no reason to trust him, essentially. So. So, and he says, when there were moments when I could explode. 5 years ago, I might have done that too, but now I don't know not to waste my energy on it. It was a moment to be silent and focus on myself. I concentrated on what I do well, play football. Chelsea signed Lukaku after he played the leading role for Inter. La, 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 la. We don't need to hear that again. And of course, we signed Nico Jackson for about 30 to 35 million. We've got Nkunku. We'll talk about those players in a moment. Just learn to keep your mouth shut, mate. What's this like Messiah complex main character syndrome when you just need everyone talking about you? And why, oh why, does the international break do this to players? If you're Belgium and you're on an international break, do they give you some sort of like drug where you just start talking crap about your employers or your desires to be elsewhere or dramas or your, protests against headlines, etc., etc., etc. It's seemingly never ending. Look, Rom, keep your mouth shut, keep scoring goals, and then hopefully Roma will qualify for the Champions League and give us 40 million euros for you, and we can finally awaken from what is a harrowing fever dream. And look, it's a shame. It's a shame. Because look, I don't want anyone to suffer. He, clearly after the World Cup, when he missed those chances or whatever, it was it was bad for him, and, apparently he went into a difficult place mentally. I do not wish that upon anyone, of course. And he was so good when we bought him. He was top 3 striker. He was unquestionably a top 3 striker in the world. You had Lewandowski, you had Kane, you had Lukaku, maybe Benzema, top 4 then. He was a top 4 striker in the world in that top, because he scored so many goals and assisted so many goals and was so devastating when utilised appropriately. And yes, we all got swept up in the narrative of ex-Chelsea unfinished business, or certainly I did. So it is a shame. He's a good player. He's clearly got an ego problem, and his behaviour problems are problematic. And it's clearly coming to the fore yet again, but I hope he just keeps scoring goals and someone will activate that clause and we just move on with our lives. Speaking of moving on with our lives, Chelsea look quite good at the moment, don't they? The midfield looks balanced. Now, there is a long read on The Athletic written by, I believe, Liam Twomey, and Tom Harris, who I believe is the statistics guy. I'm not going to cite any of it today. It's a long article. I was thinking of reading an extract, but it speaks about how Chelsea have constructed a midfield to fear in Fernandes, Caicedo, and Conor Gallagher. Now, yes, of course, it's kind of like a 4-3-3 formation a little bit more now. Fernandes is playing on the left-hand side, a little bit deeper. Caicedo's kind of in between him and Gallagher. So you could say Gallagher and Fernandes are more like 8s. Gallagher's getting slightly more forward. Enzo Fernandez is getting slightly more backwards, though Enzo was playing as a number 10 in front of a double pivot of Caicedo and Gallagher, which we've spoken about at length here on the channel. It did not work for me. A little bit deeper gives Enzo Fernandez the opportunity to play forward passes and play a little bit better, and the fact how he doesn't look like at the moment in a Chelsea shirt scoring goals in the 18-yard box or just outside, I think just move him slightly further away from goal. So yes, incredible. Without the ball, this article here talks about how Conor Gallagher is the second in the league for essentially tackles. They're called true tackles per 1,000 touches or whatever. Basically, how many proper tackles they get in. Now, Conor Gallagher is second to only Joao Palhinha of Fulham. Now, Joao Palhinha of Fulham is an incredible off-the-ball player. Bayern Munich thought they'd signed him in the summer for £60 million with that deal breaking down. And in the top 10, you've got Moises Caicedo as well, which is not actually that far off Conor Gallagher. So these two tenacious players are doing a lot of work, and Enzo probably a little bit more passy. But like I said, we've now built this this midfield of this tenacious three. Caicedo can do a bit of it all. Enzo Fernandez has got the quality to be a little bit more of a supercharged regista, if you will, a Jorginho, but a bit more tenacious and less. And this isn't a slate on Jorginho, who's a specialist player, but Jorginho's quite a soft player, isn't he? He's not gonna. He can't defend you in transition. Not that Enzo's amazing at that, but Enzo's more of a, he's Argentinian. Do you know what I mean? He's got that South American hardness about him, and he's also got the culture. So he's a really good player to have in the midfield. Moises Caicedo, we don't need to go into the details about why he's important. He was the profile Chelsea were missing. They kind of took opportunism with Enzo. And they accelerated that when he won the World Cup and the best young player. I think the owners and everyone just wanted him because they were like, all right, this kid's clearly special. Let's see if we can get him. And remember, like, the outlay for Enzo was to £32 million. It will go up to 105 million fixed. That's not add-ons, that's a fixed fee. But the way we structured it is over many, many years, which is super, super intelligent. I just think it's important to remind people of that. Whereas Moises Caicedo is a big sum up front, and it's 115 all in as well. Yeah, man. So you don't drop those two. And Conor Gallagher, of course, he's creating a huge conversation at the moment because he's wearing the captain's armband. He's putting in near man of the match performances. The data suggests he's just incredible. He works incredibly hard. Pochettino really likes him. And this should surprise no one. We all spoke about how Pochettino would probably like Mason Mount, this tenacious, hard-working off the ball midfielder that can still look good on the ball. Conor Gallagher's very similar to that, isn't he? A lot of people prefer Conor Gallagher. I spoke to a couple of people from around Chelsea a long time ago who had connections with Chelsea who said prefer Gallagher to Mount, looking at him and through the academy. And he always looked like a Pochettino player. Of course, it was very, very difficult in the summer where the headlines were like, yeah, Gallagher's for sale, 40 million, you can have him. Anyone want to get Conor Gallagher? Get your Conor Gallaghers here, ladies and gentlemen. Which I feel bad because out of all these players that were sold, he is a die-hard Chelsea fan. He comes from a family of die-hard Chelsea fans. And unlike other players last season, he was the one that categorically, you had to say, left everything on the pitch and tried really hard. So I always felt this like degree of sympathy. He's maybe not the most complete player technically, but at the moment he's completing this like really well balanced, formidable midfield. And you know me, you know what we say here in Football Therapy: midfields win or lose your games. So what happens when injured players return? Expensive injured players that both cost you over £50 million. Of course, I'm talking about Christopher Nkunku, who is predominantly a number 10, which Chelsea bought him for a 4-2-3-1 formation, and Romeo Lavia, another Belgian. So firstly, let's start with Nkunku, because I feel like he's too good to not get back in. I have a feeling that there'll be games where we just play him up front or on the left and we keep this midfield free, this kind of like 4-3-3 formation that we're playing, midfield free, and we play a front three rather than a three attackers and a one. Because the three attackers, of course, would have Nkunku behind a striker, and should Nico Jackson continue looking pretty good, then you'd play him behind Jackson. Cole Palmer on the right, Raheem Sterling on the left. Raheem Sterling is, and Mudryk looking like an excellent option, really good off the bench, or indeed the odd start. It's really tough because, we need to eventually have a conversation about Noni Madueke as well. We'll fleetingly talk about him now. Of course, he was injured. He got disciplined by Pochettino for going out partying when he was sort of injured and not featuring. It's something that these days, you've got to be very clear and get permission, and your employers know what you're doing, especially if you're young and you're supposed to be developing and giving everything for the cause. Look, Pochettino is swept under the carpet. He gave him a sort of slap on the wrist, and we move on. No problems there, and he's a good kid, Noni, and clearly very talented. But he's got an uphill struggle to get back into this team because he's kind of been gazumped by Cole Palmer, who we bought in for a lot of money, 40 million, comparatively, that Noni costs like 22 or something. So he's been his England under-21 teammate, who, by the way, Noni Madueke has shown and he has demonstrated he's got great chemistry with Cole Palmer. They can play together really, really well in the same team, but they've done it at international level, of course. So at the moment, you don't drop Cole Palmer on the right, You don't drop Raheem Sterling or indeed Mudryk on the left. Use them as options. Both will feature in every game, probably due to substitutions, due to 5 subs. And then you got up front, which, Breuer got a goal recently. He got the start recently as well in the Prem. That didn't play that well. And, of course, he looked a lot better with Jackson. I think the most important thing is keeping their midfield. So I think Nkunku comes in, and I genuinely think he just gets a start up front. Or if you really, you really want to just try and score goals, you put Raheem Sterling on the right. Which he has shown he can play very, very well for Chelsea. I know he was against Luton, but he scored 2 goals there, on the right-hand side. He can do it well as an attacking threat. And then you play Nkunku off the left, which he's done quite a lot, as a right footer, of course. And then you play Nico down the middle. Or alternatively, you play Nkunku as a striker. I think you maintain the front 3 rather than bringing back in the number 10. So that's fine. You bring in the Galactico forward in Nkunku, he finds his way back in the team because he's too good to not. That is kind of where we're at here. He's just a goal-scoring guy. You don't want to give that up. Never gonna give you up, so you bring him back in. So it's really the midfield. Romeo Lavia. Now, Joe Shields loves him. He brought him from Man City to Southampton. He's brought him to Southampton to Chelsea. Clearly, really, really rates him. He is a great player, by the way. People who know much more about football and scouting than I tell me, yes, Romelu Lavia is the truth. In terms of profile, he's not really one or the other in terms of attacking midfield or defensive midfielder, which kind of puts him a little bit into the niche realms of your Mateo Kovacic's. These like functional ball-carrying midfielders that like to receive the ball, maintain possession against a high press, and sort of transition it up the pitch a little bit, maybe by like dribbling or like short passes or something like that. So very, very niche specialist player, but Kovacic loved by Pep Guardiola, so much so that he plays him in the second half where he looked like he was definitely gagging to be sent off against Arsenal. So that's the kind of player he is, but how does a 52 million pound basic going up to 60 million quid or 58 million pounds? That is a big investment. You think Cole Palmer's starting for Chelsea? Well, he cost a basic of 40 million quid. Of course he's going to start for Chelsea. Mudryk isn't. He's a basic of 60 million quid. So what do we do with Lavia? And is he in the long-term plans? I mean, Gallagher, Caicedo and Enzo are all very young, and the fact how Gallagher's wearing the armband, I don't think it's to raise his transfer value. You'd have to say, from the investment and from the potential, like not the work rate, not the current productivity, the potential, the midfield 3 of a sitting 6 and 2 number 8s, you'd drop Gallagher. You'd play Lavia and Enzo Fernandez either side of Moises Caicedo. Now, there's no goals there whatsoever. And you need some goals from your midfield, I would suggest. Of course, Liverpool won the Champions League and the Premier League with a functional midfield 3, and they got all their goals from the wide forwards and the fullbacks even. Everything came down the side in terms of goal threat. And then even Firmino got a few goals. He was sort of joining that midfield 3 and adding functionality rather than offensive play. I wonder if that's what Pochettino is going to look for. I'm trying to think, because his greatest Tottenham team, it was very much a 4-2-3-1. So it was 2 functional midfielders, and Dele Alli was scoring loads of goals behind Kane. And that's kind of what you think you probably eventually might want to do with Nkunku. But I don't know. I think purely through financial investment, you simply do not drop Caicedo or Enzo. You just don't, because there's too much money there. There's 220 million pounds there, I think, anyway. And I think we look just from this body of work, this, stuff we can analyse now, we just look way better with a midfield 3 rather than a double pivot. And I really want to put it out to you guys what you think about Romeo Lavia. Long term, guys, do we keep this midfield 3 formation? I mean, even if we go to a double pivot, it's even more of a question about Lavia. But do you bring him in? Does he play in a midfield 3? Do you bench Conor Gallagher? Or is this simply long-term planning with Chelsea, assuming they're going to get back into the Champions League and having options in the Champions League of high quality? And that would, of course, include a well-coached, under Pochettino, Romeo Lavia. Very interested to read your thoughts, feelings, and opinions on this one, so please leave your comments down below. Thank you for supporting the content by liking and subscribing, and hopefully I'll see you back here for the next one. Peace.